Hey everyone, Pastor George here with our Apologetics Wednesdays, and we're continuing our heresy series. And I will say something about the 1700s. So, as you know, we've kind of been in the Reformation period, and then in the 1600s, you have a bunch of religious wars in Europe, and like between Protestants and Catholics, and various other, well, I mean Protestants and Catholics, but like there's just a lot of fighting going on. And so there's not really a lot of time, believe it or not, for people to make like cults or whatever. And then in the 1700s, you have more fighting going on, also with a lot of people making cults. But you have a religious revival as well with like Methodism spreading and stuff like that. I'm not saying Methodism is a cult or whatever. I'm just saying that that's when it came about. But then you have like all these revolutionary wars. So a lot of what I would say is the kooky stuff that religion normally fills is taken up by political ideals and ideology with like the American Revolution and the French Revolution, and like a lot of the people getting their substance or their being kind of like in the modern state United States today from politics, and that's kind of like where they turn, and that's like the 1700s. But then everything kind of calms down in the 1800s, especially in the early 1800s, and then you start to get a lot of weird and non-Christian groups popping back up. The first one is one that I've talked about before, and I obviously have an affinity for because it's people I interact with pretty often, but it's Mormonism. Yes. I've already talked about the problems with Mormonism a little bit in earlier videos, and maybe if you remember them, maybe not, or if you don't want to scroll down and look at them, you can kind of consider this the one all size fits all, where I kind of describe basically what it is and why it's wrong. There's a lot wrong, but just basics. So Joseph Smith, guy in the United States, gives varying accounts of how it happened, but essentially he says that God and Jesus are not the same, came to him in a dream and told him to dig up the Book of Mormon. So he went to a hill in New York and he dug up the Book of Mormon. And the Book of Mormon tells the story of how a bunch of Jews, the lost tribes of Israel, sailed across the Atlantic and landed in America, and all the Native Americans are descendants of those tribes. Of course, that already, I'm sure your brain is spinning. But that was what it is. And that Jesus Christ came to the United States and preached to them, gave them a gospel, which is the Book of Mormon, right? So the Book of Mormon is like an addition. And they say it's the most important because it's the most recent, right? Whereas Christians, we balance the Old Testament and the New Testament, holding them of equal importance. Mormons will straight up say, no, the Book of Mormon is the most important because you want the newest version, right? That's kind of how they pitch it. So you have the newest version of the book, and Joseph Smith ends up getting a lot of people to follow him because he's a very charismatic type of guy, and he's able to mass following of people, and they kind of move over the place because they face religious persecution, which isn't good. Not a fan of Christians persecuting other groups, and that's what a lot of people tended to do. So they kind of move around the Midwest. Eventually, Joseph Smith is killed, and his second in command, I mean, there's a split between a few different people, but the general population of Mormons follows Brigham Young to Salt Lake City, which is obviously kind of, the famous place where they're at now. There you go. That is the history, and now they go out and they try and convert people to Mormonism, right? Well, Mormons, in their belief system, believe that Joseph Smith was a prophet, that he got these golden plates from God, and the Book of Mormon is divine revelation, and they have a bunch of teachings. They believe that their presidents of the church are prophets as well, and that they can receive divine revelation, and this has led to a lot of problems. So, for instance, Joseph Smith and Brigham Young, his successor, did not particularly like African people of African descent. Whether that's Black Americans or Africans, they believed that they were cursed of the curse of Ham, and so they wouldn't allow them into the higher positions of church power. The church rescinded that. They got a new prophecy in the 70s that allowed them to get rid of that. They're obviously the most famous thing that Mormons don't practice anymore and haven't practiced it for the majority of their existence, actually, but just at the beginning and until Utah became a state, was the practice of polygamy, right? Having many wives. Most Mormons never did it because it costs a lot of money, but people still did it. It was actually one of the requirements that the United States put on the state of Utah, is that the Mormon church had to ban polygamy. Lo and behold, God gives the president a revelation that says, yeah, no, polygamy's bad now. Don't do it, right? Of course, you still have fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, is what they call themselves, and they're in like Arizona and other places, and they have multiple wives and stuff like that. But that's just a few of kind of the strange things that Mormonism has talked about. But the essential theological problem of Mormonism, and the reason that I think it fails, is that it denies that Jesus Christ is Lord, and it makes the gospel a gospel of works, right? So you only get into heaven in Mormonism, or you only get to become sort of saved or enter into salvation if you actually do things, right? It's big on works, and so you have to be able to earn your salvation. And the thing that you earn in Mormonism is if you're a good Mormon, you follow the rules, then you get to become a god. Because the whole point of Mormonism is that God made us to be like him. God was once a person, and by living a good life, he became God. Sounds a lot like Arianism, right? How Jesus was just a normal guy and then became a god, right? People aren't really creative with this type of stuff. So too, God has given us the ability, according to Mormons, to work our way up to godhood, and then we get our own planet or universe or whatever, and we're all creating stuff and all that good stuff. And so it's just, that's their thing. And obviously, none of that is present in the historical church. All of those are new teachings. These aren't things that you can readily find in the Bible or in the Book of Mormon. A lot of them come from Joseph Smith's later revelations and revelations of later prophets, right? It kind of building this cathedral of lies around themselves. And so it's a real shame that it's so many people, which is why it's important to talk with them. And of course, I always encourage people, if you do get Mormon missionaries, that you do talk with them, that you begin a conversation. Even if you can't maybe talk with them or convince them or whatever, I will help you. So if you see them, engage with them. All right, everyone. That's what we got for today. I will see you guys tomorrow for my next Theolog. Peace out.